welcome to another brief history. Today's brief history has a little bit of a twist though. Instead of doing the brief history on a specific location, we're going to be delving into the history of the ancient Greek gods and goddesses. Today's brief history is one of a three-part series, and we're delving into the primordial gods and goddesses today. So let's get started. Before we begin though, just a little bit of house cleaning. First and foremost, like and subscribe, hit the bell notification because this channel is growing and I'd love you to come along with. The second thing, you might hear a little bit of noise in the background. I'm still in Greece and my door is open to allow some of the air to come in, and you're gonna end up hearing the baby goats that are outside. Let's get started on the brief history of the primordial gods and goddesses. The primordial gods and goddesses have a name that sort of signifies how important they are. Let's talk about the word primordial for a minute. Do you see a root word here? That root word is prime. Have you heard the word prime at all before? I'll give you a hint. You may have heard it in math. Prime and composite? Yeah. What does it mean when a number is prime? Well, it means that that number only has one set of factors, and those factors are 1 and the number you're discussing. So 3, for example. 3 has factors that are 1 and 3. 1 times 3 is 3. There's no other combination that works. Other numbers like 6, for example, are composite. They have more than one set of factors. 1 times 6 is 6. 2 times 3 is 6. That makes that number composite. Prime means first. That root word means the most important. You might also hear the primordial gods and goddesses being called something else, a deity. A deity basically means that instead of something being male or female or having a human persona, it's kind of like a being. So when we take a look at these different gods and goddesses, oftentimes they represent things like energy or space or something that isn't really of human form. The very first primordial deity to ever exist was the deity Chaos. Now, a lot of times when people think of chaos, they think of things that are erratic or crazy, disorganized almost. But the actual definition of the word chaos means empty. And that explains why chaos would be the first deity, because chaos was born of nothing, just an energy, space that existed. At this point, you might be wondering where this concept of chaos actually came from. Where did the idea for chaos come from? In 700 BC, a man named Hesiod wrote a piece of literature called Theogony. This piece of literature included an explanation for where the deities actually came from, along with the stories that matched. Originally, though, his concept of chaos was meant to be a gap, a void between heaven and earth. He also referred to chaos as Eros, which means air. Now, from chaos was born Gaia, who's considered the representation of Earth. Gaia is fiercely protective of her children, and we're going to get into that a little bit more later. In addition to Gaia, we had Taurtarus, who was the representation of death and night. Taurtarus is seen as kind of a pit, the bottom part of what it is that exists up above, something that Gaia, Mother Earth, could never actually see. In addition to Gaia and Taurtarus, Eros was born, the representation of love. The last two deities that were born from chaos were Erebus, who's seen as the god of darkness, male energy that represents the night. Nyx was the other and seen as goddess of the night, something more feminine. Now that we've laid the groundwork for the first 5 primordial deities, plus chaos, let's talk a little bit about the children that they bore. Taurtarus gave birth to Kronos. Kronos is the representation of time passing. One of the most famous primordial deities is Gaia, who's Mother Earth, right? Well, she ended up giving birth to Uranus. Uranus is seen as Father Sky. He's one of the first primordial deities to sort of have human form, more or less. The two of them together ended up giving birth to Pontus, who represents sea and fish, Aurea, who represents mountains, and the Nesoi, who represent the sea. Uranus is a really interesting character because he and Gaia ended up giving birth to the Titans. The Titans are the main focus of our second video in this three-part series. Now, what he did with the Titans is really crazy. He ended up taking the Titans, his children, and locking them in Tartarus. Why did he do that, you ask? Because Gaia, Mother Earth, couldn't see them there, and he didn't like his kids too much. Besides the Titans, Gaia and Uranus also gave birth to Cyclops. Cyclops. Oh, here we go with the root word again. Does Cyclops sound a little bit like the tail end of bicycle? It should. A bicycle is a mechanism that has two wheels, cycle, right? And a Cyclops has one eye, one round eye. That's the root word cycle. Now, the last two of the primordial deities to give birth to children were Erebus, darkness, and Nyx, night. The two of them mated together and ended up having Aether, which is the representation of light, and Hemera, which is the representation of day. By herself, Nyx ended up giving birth to Nemesis, which is the representation of retribution, Hypnos, which is the representation of sleep, and Thanatos, which is the representation of death. So this video may have come across as being pretty short, and believe me, it was in comparison to what I thought it was going to be. But part of the reason for that is when we get into part 2 with the Titans, you're going to see how these primordial deities acted almost like puppeteers, arranging things a certain way, making things happen in a certain way. I found the entire thing totally fascinating when I was doing research, and I can't wait to share it with you. I hope you guys have a great day and see you next time. Bye!